to video 5 of our Mission 7 notes, and in this video we're going to talk about vision and the special sense of seeing. Well, obviously our eye is the organ that is involved with this, and so before we look at the internal structures of the eye, which your notes have a picture of, let's just look at the outside of the eye first. There's lots of things that protect our eyes. They're very important for our survival. You can survive obviously without eyes, but it's much more difficult. So you have the bony orbit of your eye, of your skull, excuse me. Sorry, I disappeared there. But remember when we look at, I think you labeled this if you did the skeleton scene, this bony orbit really protects our eyeball and the optic nerve that goes towards the back of it. And then you have a lot of protective fat around that eye to also help for protection. Now, the outside of the eye has some what are called accessory structures. They're not involved in the vision itself, but help do other things associated with that. Your eyebrows help keep sweat and sunlight out of your eyes. Your eyelids and eyelashes are used for blinking, and if you did the lab with the muscular system that involved blinking, you determined that was definitely a reflex. I remember a reflex is something that we cannot control. So you can't control the reflex. It's, what's the word for that? Yes, involuntary. Voluntary means you can control. Involuntary means you cannot control. So the blinking is a reflex that will keep our eyes moist and keep things out of it. That's why you were blinking when someone was throwing a paper at you. The other accessory structure is called the lacrimal apparatus. You can't see it here, but if you were to cut away this flesh and stuff, you'd be able to see a series of tubes that actually deposit tears on the surface of your eye, and also a little bit of mucus and some enzymes. And they actually are deposited on this back part of your eye, or this, not back, but the lateral side. What does lateral mean? Towards the middle or toward the side? Yes, it means toward the side. So the lateral side of your eye, this is where the liquid is deposited, and then it washes across your eye. As you blink, you spread it, and then it will actually drain right here where your tear duct is. And if you ever get what I call an eye booger, that's some of that stuff that's dried over the course of the evening if you were sleeping with that. But that's where all the secretions are drained. But the purpose of that is to keep your eye moist and if any dirt and stuff gets in there, then the fluid, it can get trapped in the fluid and the mucus, and it'll eventually come to the corner of your eye and dry. You also have a series of muscles that are attached to your eye. These are called extrinsic because it's on the outside of your eye. You have 6 on each eyeball, and that controls the movement of your eye. So looking up, looking down, looking to the side, looking to the other side, looking diagonally, you can do all of these different movements with your eye because of these different muscles. When you go to the eye doctor, and he says, follow the pencil, and you're supposed to look at the pencil as he does it, then he's testing to make sure that your muscles are working properly and your eyeball's moving the way it should. So this picture here just kind of shows you all the different movements that these different muscles will do. And these are voluntary. Remember, you can control these skeletal muscles. Okay, let's look now at the diagram that you have in your notes. And so you can have these boxes that you can drag to the correct spot. Or if you're writing them out, you can write them. First, we're going to look at the very front of the eye. Tell me what directional term refers to the front. If you picked anterior, that is exactly correct. So we're going to look at the anterior of the eye first and see that part that sticks out at the very front. If you wear contacts, you put your contacts on this. It is called the cornea. It is a transparent covering kind of, and it's most of these structures are involved in focusing light. That's their main job, is to focus light on a specific portion of the back of your eye in order for you to perceive vision. So the cornea is this transparent covering here, kind of like the snake in our room. If you're an online student, you don't know, but we do have a pet snake. And many people ask me about, do they blink? Well, they don't. They have a special membrane similar to our cornea that helps protect their eye and keep it moist so it doesn't dry out because they don't have eyelids. So that's the cornea. You can get these transplanted. If you have some problem with your eye where you need a cornea, then people can donate their corneas, obviously, after they die. They would be doing this. They wouldn't do it and still be alive, to people that need corneas. The next thing we're going to look at are the 3 layers that make up the eyeball itself. The outermost layer, and this is the white of your eye, is called the sclera. Sclera. This is what makes it white. It's very hard and tough. It protects the eyeball and helps keep its shape. In class, we're going to be dissecting a cow eye. And when you cut into that eye, you will see how tough that layer is. The middle layer is called the choroid layer. The choroid layer. You'll be able to see this in the cow. It's a very dark layer. It's when it says it's pigmented here, that's what that means. It has a color to it. And what the color does, it's a dark color so that it can absorb light. Remember, dark colors absorb light and keeps the bouncing of light rays down to a minimum so you can really focus on the correct spot to get maximum focus. It also provides blood and nutrients to the eyeball itself. Then the inner layer is called the retina. It does not extend all the way around. It's just at the back 2/3 of the eye here. If you were looking at the inside of a real eye, and again, when you see the cow eye, it's kind of a light tan color to it. This is the layer that actually contains the receptors to help you see. And what it does is absorb light. Remember when we talked about taste and smell, what kind of receptors were those? Yes, those were chemoreceptors. They are sensitive to chemicals. Well, your eye, the neurons in your eye are receptive to light, so they are photoreceptors. That's what that prefix photo refers to, light. So these are ones that are sensitive to light. They'll turn light energy into impulses that will transmit that to your brain so that you can perceive images. And this is all done in the layer of the retina. So those are your 3 layers of the eye. We're going to go back towards the anterior portion of the eye. There's a space here called the anterior chamber, and it is filled with a fluid called aqueous humor. Aqueous humor. What does the word aqueous refer to? Yes, that refers to water. So this liquid that's at the front part of the eye is kind of watery. It's clear. It supplies oxygen to the eye and nutrients to the lens here, this is the lens, and also is involved in some of the light refraction that you need to do to get proper focus. Then we have over here the back of the eye, this big area, the posterior chamber, is filled with vitreous humor. This is more of like a jelly-like material consistency. It's thicker, and it supports the structure of the eye and also helps transmit light to the main focus point. If you have uncontrolled diabetes, that can affect how much vitreous humor is made. And so if you get too much of this, it will increase the pressure in your eye, which is not a good thing. It can put pressure on the blood vessels that are in the retina and damage them so that you basically will go blind. And so that's where one of the bad things about diabetes, if you do not control it, later on it can lead to blindness, and that's how it does that. Again, when you go to the eye doctor and you sit there and put your chin in that little thing and they do the puff of air in your eye and they say, don't blink, and then they do the little air, and what it does is when the air poofs, it's going to cause the cornea to indent a little bit. If there's too much liquid here, there's too much pressure on the inside, and your cornea won't go in as much when that little puff of air hits it. So they have the instrument they use can measure how deep the cornea goes in, and if it's not deep enough, then they may say that you're having you have too much pressure on the inside of your eye. That condition is called glaucoma. So if you know anybody that has that or is facing that, that's what that is. Okay, going back towards the front then, we have this portion. This is again, we're looking at the side view. This is the colored part of your eye. It's called the iris. And this is what you can change the size of the dot in between it. Notice there's a space in the middle there. And so this is a muscle that can be contracted and relaxed. It is involuntary. It is not involuntary. You can't control the size or how this is doing. But when you contract it, it makes this opening smaller. And when it relaxes, it makes it bigger. That hole or opening is called the pupil. So when you're looking at someone's eyes and you see their pupil, you're looking into their eye through the iris, which is the colored part. Then right behind that is this structure here called the lens. It's biconvex. That's referring to the shape of it. It's flexible when it's healthy. And so what happens, you've got these muscles attached to it that are holding it in place. And these muscles can constrict or dilate to change the shape of the eye, of the lens. And the whole reason you want to change the shape of the lens is to focus light rays as they're coming in. You want to try to focus it on this one spot right here. Okay, that's the spot of the best way, most focus that you can see. So the job, when you're looking straight at something, you should see it very clear, because all of these structures in your eye are changing the shape and the path of the light ray to focus on that spot of greatest visual acuity. Now, when you're looking straight ahead, try this while you're looking at this video. Looking straight ahead, what you see straight ahead is very clear, but things around it and to the side are not. They're blurry because the light rays are not hitting that one spot that's back here in the retina. They're hitting the periphery of it, and that's your peripheral vision. Remember, we talked about peripheral nerves being the ones on the outside of the central nervous system. Your peripheral vision is the vision on the outsides of that main vision spot when it's hitting the spot of best acuity. When these nerves are stimulated by light, they'll all converge and send messages here, which is the optic nerve. And that goes out the back side of your eye. And what is the back? What is the word directional term for the back? Yes, posterior is the answer to that. So it's at the posterior end of your eye, and it goes out through the back part of your skull, the orbit of your eye, and connects to your brain. So again, we've got, well, let me show you first the eye. So here's a model of the eye. Okay, so if we're looking at it, you see it kind of has this curve at the front. This is the cornea. These are all the different muscles, the red thing you see. Turn that off. Okay. And the white of the eye, what is that called again? Yes, this is the sclera. When we open this model up, then we're going to see this dark layer, this brownish layer, that's the choroid. That's, remember, the middle layer of the eye. I'm going to take the cornea off here so we can get to the rest of it. This here is the pupil. That's the empty spot. And then here is the iris. So when you're in an area that has, or in a situation that has very low light intensity, what do you think is going to happen to the size of the pupil? Will it get bigger or smaller? Yes, it'll get bigger, because if there's less light, this needs to get bigger to let more of those low light level rays into your eye. If you're in very bright light, then what is it going to do? Yeah, so it's going to get smaller. If you get too much light in there and too strong, it could damage the retina. That's why you never stare at the sun, because those light rays are too bright. So your pupil will get smaller to prevent that from happening. Okay, so let's open this up. Open up the choroids. Here we go. So now you see this little thing that my fingers are holding. This is the lens. And when we dissect the cow eye, you'll be able to pop that lens out very easily. And then this would be the retina. That's the internal layer. You know, it's not precise because we know it doesn't cover the whole thing. Inside here would be the vitreous humor. This is the posterior chamber. And you see the blood vessels that are painted on this to show you that the retina has lots of blood vessels for nourishment and to bring it oxygen too. We'll talk a little bit more about this retina in just a minute, but this thing here is the nerve, the optic nerve that's going to go out the back or the posterior part of the eye. And if we're looking at the orbit, remember that it has a hole. The back here, that's where the optic nerve would go in through your skull. Okay, and then it would come back up through here. You've got that opening in the back there, and you can think of the brain. Then if we look again at the back of the brain, this is the optic nerve that has come from the right eyeball. This is the optic nerve from the left eyeball, and what they will do is they will cross. So here's the left eyeball optic nerve. It'll cross and go towards this side of the brain. The right eye optic nerve will cross here and take impulses to the left side of the brain. Remember, we're going to, I don't know if you remember which lobe of the brain is vision perceived. Yes, it's the occipital lobe. So these nerves will go all the way towards the back of the brain. This crossing point is called the optic chiasm, and you saw that in the sheep brain if you dissected that. So just a little bit more a few things about more vision. Remember, it is stimulated by light, so it's a photoreceptor that we have in our eyes. This is specifically, I'll show you what they are in just a minute. In the retinal layer, they convert light energy into electrical energy, and that's the action potential we've been talking about, which will then travel to the brain. And this just shows you the retina some more. And if we look specifically at the fovea centralis, that's the area I was saying is the point of best visual acuity. Where the optic nerve leaves the eye, this is actually a blind spot. It's called the optic disc. And you may be doing an activity if you choose one of the major grades that looks at the blind spot. But the actual photoreceptors are the rods and cones. The rods help you determine kind of the black and white, gray-ish colors. And then the cones are the ones that detect your color in bright light situations. Your rods are active in low light situations. So when you go outside and it's kind of dusk or it's a full moon and you're able to see better using the rods, and then in daylight, use the cones. So that's the end of the vision information. So we will end this here, and I'll see you again when we talk about hearing.